Welcome back.
Hello.
This is episode 498 of Misha Dianne Watch Santa Barbara, the first episode of week 103. Brought to you, as always, by this Expo 2000 mug, which I did not go to, but was sent to me by a friend from Germany. This was in Hanover, Germany, in 2000. That's all the Expo news for this week. Haley is now living with Jane. Oh, did I mention this originally at Monday, July 14th, 1986? So it's summer in Santa Barbara, and Haley is now living with Jane, and I think Ted lives elsewhere. I think that maybe one of those two scenes that were in French. It may have been decided that Haley is going to move in with Jane, but I don't know if we've actually seen that.
No.
Either that, once in a while when they come back from commercial, I have a feeling the scene may have started late, so maybe that's why we didn't know. Haley prepares a meal for Ted that doesn't go well, but since Jane is not expected until late, they have sex instead. Santana spends some time on Cruz's lap, but then is annoyed when Eden bursts into his office to talk about what she found in Keith's office. Eden mentions to Santana that she's interested in Keith, and Santana says she's surprised Eden is interested in someone who's unattached. Cruz is angry with Eden for trying to help him. So Eden decides to go it alone, and she gets a friend to reverse look up the phone number that she had written down and finds some kind of garage, I think, with a payphone that she confirms is where the number was called, where I think Alvarez called Keith from. And she has to hide behind a van when some people come in. She hears El Blanco come in. El Blanco comes in. He's wearing, it looks like, snakeskin boots. And he uses that payphone to call Keith Timmons. So we now know Keith is not El Blanco.
Mm-hmm. And Eden now knows that Keith is involved with El Blanco.
Did she know that was Keith that he was talking to?
Because
we didn't know until... Because the whole time I thought, oh, maybe, could it be Keith, right? Until the very end when he hangs up and they cut to Keith saying goodbye to him in his office. So I don't think we knew it was Keith until after the call was just about to end.
I'm wondering, though, she did take down the phone number, though, didn't she, when she was in Keith's office?
Yeah, that's how she found that place.
So she knows that this person is connected with Keith.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I don't know if she's going to have any luck getting Cruz to listen to any of her evidence, though.
Well, he'll listen to it when she's been captured and he's frantically trying to, rescue her.
Mm-hmm. Will that mean that the DA slot will soon be available for Mason to run? Keith tells Santana that he's still interested in her and gives her a key to his apartment. Santana is, of course, telling him the whole time, no, I'm going back to Cruz. But then she takes some crack, and immediately we see Night Santana. Keith says, you confuse me. You tell me you don't want to see me, but you don't leave. And thanks to the crack, they end up kissing again, and they end up lying down on the desk, so who knows what's going on in the office there. This is funny, because this week on Days of Our Lives, there was a similar thing. Not entirely, but Nicole had a mystery drink that someone had prepared for EJ, and immediately she threw herself at EJ. So maybe it was crack. Santa Barbara crack. The gigantic letter C atop the Capwell Hotel falls onto Mary Duval.
The 7-foot-tall C falls on Mary.
Mark and Mason lift it off of her. It is made of, steel, so it would have some weight to it, but looks like they were able to lift it off of her. Mason won't let Dr. Mark McCormick anywhere near Mary, and Mary dies in his arms. So we're finally rid of Mary, the least interesting Duval family member.
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a character I felt a huge amount of animosity towards, as I certainly did with Dylan Hartley, but for me, the character was kind of an amalgam, I think, of being very self-righteous, a little bit shrill, and frankly, a little bit boring, too. So I I feel like Mason kind of deserves a little more fiery character.
I think she's in the Amy Perkins bin of dull people. And yeah, obviously the writers have decided Amy doesn't need to be on the front burner. They decided the same with Mary. And I guess decided killing her off was the best thing. Because what I'm thinking is, A, Mason can now maybe take revenge against someone.
Mm-hmm.
B, Mason can now start drinking more, and maybe the actor will get a nice alcoholism storyline. And I remember the third thing, but I can't remember what it was.
It seems to me that once they decided to kill her off, it was quite quick. Like, this is something that could have been drawn out for a week or two anyway. Will she, won't she die? What'll happen to the baby? You know, you could actually pull it out. So they seem to have come to a decision that perhaps they want other things for the Mason character. All I can think is that they wanted to move on with other things for Mason, or that somehow her death will accelerate another plot or another aspect of an existing plot that they really want to move forward with.
One thing that I did think of, tangentially now, and maybe it's the real reason, tough to ask the writer, what if they came up with a really good storyline for Cece's firstborn grandchild, and they said, it's just too soon to do it, and we don't want to do it with Mason and Mary's baby. We need to get rid of the baby so we can do the storyline that we want, that we've thought of, that's better, and push the first grandchild thing, back another year now at least, right? So I'm kind of wondering if that was it. I know I think I briefly read a quote by the writer who killed off Mary. Trying to find it. I'll try and find that interview and see if there's some, more than just one brief mention of it. Maybe we'll get some insight into why that was done. Mason strangles Mark. He says, "Why couldn't it have been you?" He's got him in a chokehold, actually. And, by that point, Cece and Cruz are both there to, I guess, separate them. And Cruz ends up I think I accidentally skipped over a bit. Cece ends up hugging Mason and telling him that he loves him. Cruz goes to the Capwell house and tells Eden what happened. Eden says, "Oh, that was my idea." Oh, this is the other thing. I wonder who Mason's going to blame. Even though he had that nice hug with Cece. Cece did just say a few minutes earlier, "Boy, I kind of blame myself for pushing Mark and Mary together." I wonder if Mason's going to go on a blame tour for a little while.
He could also perhaps blame Cece for holding him back so long, so he just arrived on the roof in time to see the giant sea fall on Mary, and he may feel like if he had gotten there a little bit sooner, he could have rescued her, perhaps. I don't think that would be very realistic, since Julia and Mark were right there as well, and whatever kinds of arguments they were having, they certainly didn't want, Mary to get injured. So I don't think that would be realistic, but that would be, perhaps a way they could go with it.
There may still be something between Julia and Mason that needs to be settled, because I don't think he quite is aware that she was only pretending to defend Mark. Mark, by the way, Mary's husband, insists that it's up to him to plan the funeral. And every Capwell member of the family that he mentions this to seems to think, I don't know if Cece and Mason are going to allow that. So we'll see a stand-up. I think legally he probably has the right to be the one to do it.
Yeah, or Mary's family, who I guess we will never see them again.
Yeah, but, I wonder how that's going to work.
Yeah, I would almost hope to see Christy at the funeral at least, or Mary's mom, but I don't think we probably will.
According to IMDb, neither of those other actresses, is listed. But then sometimes, if people don't have lines, they could be in an episode and not listed on IMDb. I'm guessing at least we'll see Mother Isabel.
I think so.
Yeah, maybe a couple of other nuns that we've seen once or twice. Julia and Mark, of course, have another argument. Julia threatens Mark's medical license, and Mark threatens Julia's law license. So they may both have to kind of be quiet about What happened?
They may both need Mason as a lawyer since he's now the only other lawyer left in the show.
Mm-hmm.
We had
There's
so
Lindsay
many
Smith when you need
lawyers for a while, and now we only have two.
At the gazebo, Eden finds Mason crying and tells Mason that Mary was lucky to have found him. And then after Eden leaves, Mason hears Mary's voice. It jumps up, but of course it was all in his head.
It was a really nice scene between Eden and Mason, and I really liked before she went to him. I think she said to Cece and Ted, perhaps, is anyone comforting Mason? Well, I'm going to then.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that's good.
that was really nice.
Mm-hmm. And that's it for a Monday. So this week, I guess maybe we're pushing off that high school reunion for another little while because it doesn't seem like it should be happening in the same week as his funeral. And then we'll just see if Mason can really push the rape trial anymore without his star witness.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd probably be best for Mark, really, to leave town and hope Mason, not Mason forgets about him, but I think Keith Timmons is very logically going to tell Mason there's no point in pursuing this.
Yeah.
Right? I think Mark should rely on that and realize leaving town might be the best thing and see if the medical board forgets. They were reviewing his license. Because hanging out and, forcing the funeral thing is just going to give people more reason to hate him and maybe not drop it.
Yeah, it actually didn't even occur to me that Mason was going to continue because Mary didn't want him to continue, and he was already wavering a little bit on that. So
again, maybe he still got Janice as a potential thing that he could get her to testify to the other thing, at least so that he'll lose his license. So
yeah,
I could see Mason going for revenge against Mark with whatever he has left. All right, it was a Monday episode. We're now on Tuesday, July 15th, so we're halfway through July, and that means the second anniversary of Santa Barbara is just 2 weeks away. We'll be back after we watch the Tuesday episode. See you then.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to episode 499 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
Brought to you, as always, by this mug back here. And look, we've got 99 here to celebrate episode 499. And we saw Wolf Muser from Marcello Armanti on Knots Landing yesterday. This was in fall of 85, which would have been after he left Santa Barbara. Under hypnosis, Kelly remembers Dylan. She says, I killed him. This is just what Dr. Renfro wants, because he's recording. When she awakens, she doesn't remember. Courtney, in a new disguise, enters the state hospital and finds, thanks to a air conditioner repairman, a vent that goes all the way to an area that has an exit door to the outside. And she thinks it's time for Pearl to leave, and he reluctantly agrees, says his goodbyes to everyone, but by the end of the day he realizes that, especially Kelly, they can't make it inside without his help. So he, at the last second, bails and tells Courtney he's going to stay.
And I think the look on Courtney's face, it really seemed to me like she was perhaps seeing this as the beginning of the end of their relationship.
I think so. She seemed quite angry, actually.
And I actually did a little bit of research on the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest after watching this, and there's a lot of parallels in the book and in the movie. The character played by Jack Nicholson is a sane person in a mental institution. He's actually there to avoid a jail sentence. And it's a really similar plot in a lot of ways because he kind of rouses up all the people in there and they throw parties and that kind of thing. And of course, the Jack Nicholson character ends up lobotomized at the end.
Uh-oh.
So I really hope that we don't see a similar trajectory for Pearl in this, but I do feel like, maybe this choice is going to be very fateful for him.
Well, I don't know what Renfrew's treatment options are after electroshock, but maybe lobotomy is something that they will at least threaten with before he's rescued by Kelly.
I do feel that there is, some tension in this kind of being his last chance to escape, especially if Courtney kind of gives up on him after this. And we know that Justin Moore is not coming back, so there's not going to be a lot of people to rescue him if Courtney kind of gives up on him after this point.
Pearl did tell Courtney in the other episode to give Justin an update, so he's still being referenced at least. I haven't seen Nick for a while either.
No.
Mason dreams about Mary. So we still have Harley Kozak on the show because it was new sequences. Mark also dreams about Mary, but it's mainly flashbacks to her being killed by a giant letter C. Cece asks Julia why she took Mark's case. It's weird how unforthcoming Julia is to all these people because all she will say is that she doesn't represent him anymore. I don't know if she's worried that Cece will get her license revoked if she tells him what she really wanted to do, because quite frankly, I think he'd be on her side.
Yeah, I had a feeling that the reason why she's being kind of coy about this is because perhaps Mark has gotten under her skin a little bit about possibly losing her license.
Cece is actually worried about what Mason might do to Mark and thinks it would be best if Mark just left town. Ted helps Mason pick out some clothes for Mary to be buried in. Mark tells Ted and Mason that neither of them may speak at Mary's funeral. So Mason goes on to the funeral ahead to deliver his eulogy in person to Mary's coffin. Julia arrives, and the way they shot it, for a second you thought it was going to be Mary, especially since we knew she was already in the episode. They kind of had her in silhouette, and Mason had just finished his eulogy. But he doesn't really give Julia a good opportunity to defend herself. All she can say is that she was really on his side, which I don't think. I think that just goes right through him. I don't think he really even registers that. And Mason ends up walking out just as Cece and Ted arrive for the funeral. And we do not see Christy or Theta at this funeral.
No.
Or even a mention that they're just off camera. In fact, we only see Cece speaking throughout the funeral. And he says, I'm probably the person who's known Mary the longest, because I knew her when I was in a coma. While Cece speaks, we see Mary go up to the roof of the Capwell Hotel. And some workman who doesn't realize who he is says, oh, you be careful, someone died up here. He ends up finding Mary's necklace, which somehow has fell off her neck at some point during the events, and is kind of sitting under the sea, and it's got a cross on the end of it. When he returns to the funeral, he puts the cross over the picture of Mary that's standing up there and turns to the assembled trio and says to Mary, Julia, and Cece, you killed her, you three, and you're going to pay for it. You're going to suffer like she did, one by one.
And we can definitely see where this threat is coming from his point of view. Of course, Mark is the one who raped her and pursued her and practically, pushed her over the edge, at least mentally. If he didn't push over the sign, he definitely was the reason she was up on the roof. CC and his crappy sign, of course. And
kept Mason from getting to the roof on time. And
exactly.
Pushed Mark and Mary together.
Exactly, and Julia, as far as Mason is concerned, is the one who defended Mark, which is just unforgivable in his eyes at this point.
So I wonder which one he'll go after first, and what will be the form of his revenge.
Yeah.
I don't know if he has anything on Julia that could get her disbarred. Mark, definitely he could get him to lose his medical license. And Cece, I don't know, maybe he's still got that paper that Grant wanted, right? He did actually find it. So maybe he will give Lionel all of his money back, just despite Cece.
Yeah.
So that would be the only thing. I was kind of wondering how the Lockridges might get their stuff back, but yeah, Mason really has that in his power, so maybe that's what he'll do. And that was it for this episode. Is this the last we've seen of Mary Duval? I don't think so. We'll be back for episode 500 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara. We will see you then.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to episode 500 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara. On location at a place called Butter. At the state hospital, Pearl reveals his plan for getting everyone out to dinner as he had invited them. He has arranged to show a movie in the common room, which, as we know, is missing an air conditioner and has a duct that leads to an exit door. So he puts the projector screen in front of the hole, starts the movie, turns off the lights, and everyone scrambles through the hole to go on their dinner with Pearl. And he takes them to Buzz's, which is under construction. And Alice manages to set a fire, and then Owen appears to set another fire in the kitchen a little bit later, unfortunately. So hopefully they won't burn Buzz's to the ground. But Cece gets a call at one point saying, your daughter has left the hospital with some other patients. So now the whole town will be out looking for Kelly. Still no one really, other than Courtney, knows that Pearl is involved. A butter fire? I don't know.
I think that this will be a bit of a game changer in Pearl's relationship with the hospital. Could be a turning point, I feel. Certainly, again, if you go back to the movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, it was this kind of an event that was a bit of a game changer for the Jack Nicholson character in this.
Yeah, I think if somehow he gets locked back up instead of escaping, or maybe he volunteers to come back, he could be in trouble. Eden is at Keith's place after work, having wine. She said, I wanted to see what a DA lives like. And we noticed his place is not quite as ostentatious as Mason or Sophia's apartments are. So he's got sort of a normal apartment, really. A little bit like Santana's in a way, in the style of the walls, I would say. Keith is called away to the office, and he lets Eden stay there, which is surprising because he's probably got a lot of secrets. He says, help yourself to some wine, and anything else you find, I'll fingerprint the place when I come back. So she immediately starts going, we have an audience. She immediately starts going through all of his things, his mail, and she finds a yearbook from high school, which of course her future husband Cruz will be in that same yearbook. So he finds a picture of Cruz, a picture of Keith, and picture of Santana, which I thought looked interesting, a little bit like Ava Lazar, the way they had her hair done and things. So that was kind of fun because it's, kind of half Ava Lazar, half Gina Gallego. But someone knocks on the door and she hides. No, first she looks through one of several portholes Keith has in his door, and she sees the snakeskin boots of El Blanco. So she hides when she realizes El Blanco is breaking into Keith's apartment. All El Blanco does is leave a note, but I don't think Eden got a sight of his face from the closet that she was hiding in. But before she can leave, Santana shows up, and she lets herself in with the key that Keith gave her. She hears a cat meowing from inside the closet, opens the closet, and there's Eden holding the cat. And Eden says, I guess Keith is scheduling his women a little too close together. So Santana needs to come up with an explanation why she's in Keith's place, and says, I let myself in with this key that he gave me to redecorate his place. I'm returning it now. And I don't think Eden ever explains why she's in Keith's place. Well, I guess Santana knows they were kind of dating, so. Anyway, this really throws Santana off to see Eden at Keith's place. Mason begins his revenge against everyone who led to his wife's death, or his fiance's death. He has 4 envelopes addressed. Now, the only names I kept seeing are Julia and Mark. The 3rd envelope is obviously for Cece, but the 4th we had to figure out from what happened in the episode. Gina shows up to give Mason her condolences and to say if there's anything she can do. And she donated a day's of proceeds from Mrs. Capwell's cookies to buy a mass card for Mary. And after Gina leaves, we see Mason tear up one of the letters. So seems like he was going to have revenge on Gina, but has decided to let her off. Which is interesting because she was the original person who delayed him and Mary from getting together. But he then calls Gina back because he has an idea. She can deliver the letters for him. So Gina delivers one to Julia, which is from Mason, saying to meet him at the courthouse at 9 p.m. She delivers one to Mark, which says meet me at the Orient Express at 8 p.m. Mark does show up there, and Mason pulls a gun on him and leads him up to the roof where Mary died. He says he was going to kill Mark. But first he wants Mark to confess to raping Mary, which he does, and he signs a confession, and then Mason says, I'm going to kill you anyway. That was a bit of a cliffhanger on the roof. Julia finds out that Mason has talked Theda Bassett into suing her for wrongful death of Mary. And Cece also finds out that Theda Bassett is suing him for $2 million. And he says, oh, just write her a check. And his lawyer goes, well, I could for that, but she's also suing you for $25 million in punitive damages or something like that. And also she wants to bring a legal suit against you. Someone in the DA's office is responsible. And of course they immediately realize it's Mason. So Cece is not too happy with Mason there. So I guess Cece's revenge is not quite what we thought it was going to be. We thought he was going to hand over the deed to the property to Lionel, but it looks like he's gotten Theda to sue him. And we should point out Theda and Christy were not at the funeral of their own family member. So I had one other little thing written here about Julia, but I can't read it. The something Julia. I guess there was something else with Julia, briefly. I think Julia and Cece had a brief scene. But that was it for our 500th episode.
Actually, that's not quite it.
Uh-oh. Did I forget something?
You forgot how things ended with Eden on this episode.
Oh, that's right. So Eden decides to follow up on El Blanco herself. She goes to the garage where she had previously tracked down the phone number and sneaks into there. And El Blanco is in the office of the garage on the phone, and he's got his snake skin boots on the desk making a phone call. And Eden uses the payphone, which had a really loud ringer on it when she put the dime in. I'm shocked El Blanco didn't hear it. But she calls, she leaves a message for Cruz. And then when someone else shows up, she hides in the van. And the person who shows up is Keith Timmons with 2 big stacks of money for El Blanco, who we finally see. And we find out why he's called El Blanco. He has white hair and white eyes. So we think he's meant to be an albino. Unfortunately, Eden doesn't realize that the van that's used to bring illegal immigrants over from Mexico seems to be unopenable from the inside once she closes the door. And she's locked in the back of the van as El Blanco gets in to drive to Mexico to pick up 20 illegal immigrants that Keith is somehow paying him to do. So Keith must be getting money to smuggle these people across the border.
And I think this might turn out to be fairly significant, that Eden left her message on Cruz's home phone. So I can imagine Santana just coming home and erasing that. She's very unhappy with Eden. And I think that could become another big problem in her relationship with Cruz if Eden is in even more jeopardy because of that.
I mean, I imagine if Eden manages to escape the van, she'll be in Mexico. So, and probably not in an area where she wants to be. So, yeah, she might be in jeopardy for a little while, and no one knows where she is. Meanwhile, everyone's looking for Kelly, so they probably think Eden's fine. And that is it for our 500th episode. And there's we have a live studio audience today. and episode 500 of Santa Barbara. Tomorrow is Thursday, July 17th, our anniversary, and Santa Barbara will not be on because the daytime Emmys will be on. We will watch those and let you know any exciting Santa Barbara related occurrences. So we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.
Good afternoon, NBC.
Santa Barbara's not on.
Yes, I know Santa Barbara isn't on.
It's my favorite soap.
Oh, Santa Barbara's your favorite soap? Mine, too. But you are having a wonderful time watching the daytime Emmys.
They're okay, but I want Santa Barbara.
Not wonderful enough. Thank you for calling NBC.
Welcome back.
Hello.
We watched the 1986 Daytime Emmys. Someone kindly put on YouTube only clips involving Santa Barbara actors. Now, half of them you might have thought those people aren't on Santa Barbara, but a lot of them will be in the future. Eileen Davidson and Terry Lester. And Gina, Sophia, and Cece presented an Emmy in character. And Cruz and Eden also in character. Outstanding ingenue, Robin Wright lost to Ellen Wheeler, who played twins Vicky and Marley on Another World. Nicholas Coster and Terry Lester lost to David Canary, who played twins Adam and Stuart on All My Children. Guess if you play a twin, you get an Emmy. Outstanding supporting actor won by John Wesley Shipp, who we know better as The Flash, and who will be joining Santa Barbara later in the year. And outstanding supporting actress Dame Judith Anderson lost to Leanne Hunley, who, of course, is still playing Anna on Days of Our Lives.
Yeah, it was not a winning year, obviously, for Santa Barbara. We even saw Nicholas Coster lose, which was kind of disappointing. But it was really fun to see this because it was such a flashback to the 80s. They had this really glitzy performance of Robert Palmer's "Addicted to Love," and of course, everyone has the big gowns and the sequins and. They had made the decision that all the presenters would be in character, which I'm not sure went really that well.
Some of them were confusing to the audience.
Yes. I think that was one of those ideas that sounded a little bit better on paper than it was in real life.
And last year, Santa Barbara wasn't up for any Emmys, so we didn't mention it last year. Welcome back. We watched episode 501 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Friday, July 18th, 1986. After the excitement of the Emmys, we are back on the roof of the Capwell Hotel, which is where Mason and Mark are meeting. And Mason strikes Mark with the butt of his gun, knocking him to the ground, and then tells him to say his prayers and fires the gun. At 9 o'clock, Julia arrives at the courtroom to find Mason already sitting in the judge's chair. And, of course, he puts her on trial, and despite her objections, he finds her guilty and raises the gun. At 10 o'clock, Mason arrives at the Capwell atrium to tell Cece that he is guilty of keeping him from getting to Mary in time. Cece says, "I'm not going to play along with this," and tries to leave, and Mason fires a gun into the ceiling. Which made me think, are there any bedrooms up there? But he had told Cece to make sure he was alone in the house, so hopefully there's not a dead maid upstairs. So Cece decides to go on the offensive and tells Mason that the only reason Mary was up on the roof in the first place is because she was so upset that Mason was forcing her to go ahead with this lawsuit that she had no interest in. Mason ends up leaving, and he goes to the roof of the Capwell Hotel to think this over, and he has several flashbacks as he replays Cece's words in his mind, discovering to worry if Mason might be committing suicide. Julia arrives at the Capwell house, very much alive, and tells Cece that she thinks that Mason threatened to kill Mark, and Cece says, "Well, I think he actually has killed Mark." Julia says they've got to call the police. And we didn't see Mark's body up on the roof when Mason returned.
Yeah, I feel like he probably didn't remember he did extract that confession from him. And perhaps for Mason, it might actually be more satisfying to put Mark's life through the ringer than to just finish him off.
Maybe he, made him leave town. Pearl moves the party from Buzz's, after several fires, to the prop storage warehouse where he has his clamshell bed. And after a night of partying, Courtney and Pearl leave the inmates alone as they go to find a car to take them back to the state hospital. Kelly decides she's going to leave, even though Owen tries his best to stop her. Dr. Rawlings, Cruz, and an orderly arrive to take everyone back to
It wasn't
the
Cruz,
hospital.
was it?
Oh, sorry, no, it was Paul. Meanwhile, Kelly arrives home and begs Cece not to send her back to the state hospital, but she says that she's getting better on her own. It's nothing that Dr. Rawlings is doing. But Cece says, well, his hands are tied because it's the judge that ordered her there, and her only other option is the prison hospital. Rawlings arrives to take Kelly back, and all Cece can promise is that she'll be out soon. Courtney and Pearl are hiding in the bushes as this all occurs. I think this episode, Courtney is very annoyed as Pearl really looks like he decides to not leave the hospital and that he's going to go back with everyone.
Yeah, I think one of the sort of pivotal things in this episode is Courtney has actually booked 2 tickets to go to Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And the flight is to leave first thing in the morning. I think we might have a situation where Courtney is on that flight and leaves, and Pearl is not.
Mm-hmm. And then she won't be there to save him if Rollins decides to do something nasty that day.
Yeah, exactly. And we've already talked about that a little bit, but I do think Courtney has just about had it with Pearl at this point. And I do think, we've seen Kelly's sort of desperation to kind of keep Pearl with her. And I think that's actually a really good sign of the fact that she's not very well, because I don't think a well Kelly Capwell, first of all, she's actually quite a generous character, so I think she would want Pearl to go and have his life. But I also think, there is a little bit of attraction there as well, and I don't think a healthy Kelly Capwell would really be attracted to Pearl or Michael.
Mm.
I don't think she'd be attracted to either one. I mean, he's not very much like Joe or Nick. So I think that's kind of an ongoing sign that she isn't as well as she would like to be.
She did slip and call him Pearl at one point while talking about him to CC. So CC might be wondering about that. Keith is worried that Eden might have seen El Blanco, but he is assured that no one saw him when he broke into Keith's house. Santana goes to Keith and complains that she found Eden there, and he tells her Eden means nothing to him and tries to seduce her. Cruz listens to Eden's voicemail and raids the garage, but it is empty, so he has the phone company check the phone records of the payphone and finds that there were 10 calls made to Keith Timmons in the last few days from that number. Cruz confronts Keith, who says, "Oh yeah, I've been working on this sting operation that you just blew. And I didn't want to tell the police because you've got all those leaks, Then Cruz is extremely annoyed to realize that Santana is there, has been there the whole time at Keith's apartment.
Yeah, so I got this wrong. I thought this phone call, this phone message that Eden had left might come between Cruz and Santana, which it did not, because he got it right away. However, I do think the situation with Cruz, Santana, and Keith is definitely going to put a bit of a crimp in the Cruz and Santana marriage, obviously. And we see Santana being very upset. I think quite worried that Cruz has basically caught her with Keith. I think she's going to be even more upset in subsequent episodes when she realizes that Cruz is more upset over Eden missing than her being with Keith.
Mm. Eden, of course, is in the back of a van heading for Mexico, and that we hear the driver and another person up front complaining that there are actually only 4 people to pick up instead of the 20 that they were hoping to ferry across the border. The van stops at one point, and the drivers get out, and I think they may have seen something in the rearview mirror, seen Eden under the blanket or something, because they pull the door open and pull Eden out. One of the men recognizes her, but then a police helicopter approaches and tells everyone to freeze. Of course, everyone's pretty much run away except Eden at this point. So I guess Eden's saved.
Yeah, I was a little bit unsure because they were quite excited. It seemed to me that they had gotten an Eden Capwell. And at first I thought perhaps we were going to see the beginning of a kind of kidnapping hostage
That's what
situation.
I thought too.
I'm assuming the police are there to rescue her. We don't really know where Keith is sitting on all this. Maybe they're Keith's men who are coming to take Eden away, but not necessarily rescue her. I don't know.
I think they were speaking English, but so I think they were on the U.S. side of the border. Yeah, I don't know if Eden has any ID on her.
Yeah, I mean, she's quite obviously not an immigrant worker, so.
I assume she'll be back in Santa Barbara tomorrow. That's it for this week. Our last short week for a while. I think probably have to go till Thanksgiving again before we have a little break. So it'll be full speed ahead. Someday we'll get a class reunion, I guess.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to that, seeing the pictures of the various people in the yearbook. And obviously they used older pictures of the actual actors. The picture they used for Cruz, I think, is very similar to the way we've seen him in some of his guest starring roles in some of these old
like
shows.
Hawaii Five-0 and such.
Yeah, I kind of feel this was his Barnaby Jones era, maybe, that the photo was taken.
Hair a bit shorter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe we'll meet some other high school people that, may click and stick around on the show a little bit.
Yeah, I really feel Cruz and Santana need to remain married, at least to get through this reunion.
Maybe that's where it'll all fall apart.
Yeah.
On stage, in front of everyone. That's it for week 103. We'll be back next week for week 104 of Misha Dianne Watch Santa Barbara after we watch episode 502 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
What are you doing here? Just trying to be discreet. I didn't know who was at the door. Guess Keith schedules his women too close together.